On December 7, 1941, Japan followed the same pattern as its Axis partners. It struck first and declared war afterward. Japanese aircraft roared over Pearl Harbor, shattering the illusion of American invulnerability. Battleships burned, hangars collapsed, aircraft and equipment were destroyed, and more than 2,400 Americans were killed. From Tokyo's perspective, the attack bought what Japan needed most: time. But Pearl Harbor did not weaken the United States, it activated it. Beneath the smoke and wreckage lay a reality Japan had fatally misunderstood. Modern wars are not won by surprise or bravery alone. They are won by factories, fuel, and the ability to replace losses faster than the enemy. This war would not be decided by heroics or single battles, but by mathematics, industry, and endurance. By the summer of 1941, Japan was not preparing for conquest, it was racing against collapse. 4 years of war in China had drained fuel, steel, and manpower without delivering victory. Japan's industrial base was never designed for prolonged attrition. Worse, it had almost no domestic oil. Roughly 80% of its fuel was imported, much of it from the United States. That dependency became a weapon in July 1941, when Washington froze Japanese assets and imposed a full oil embargo after Japan occupied French Indochina. Britain and the Netherlands followed. Overnight, Japan's naval lifeline was severed. Naval planners calculated that existing reserves could sustain operations for only 8 months. After that, the Imperial Navy would be immobilized. Ships trapped in port, aircraft grounded, power reduced to zero. Japan faced 2 choices, both unacceptable. Withdrawal from China meant political collapse and humiliation at home. The alternative was war, to seize oil fields in Southeast Asia. But reaching them required crossing waters controlled by the United States. The American Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor stood directly in the way. Japan's leaders did not believe they could win a long war against the United States. What they believed, what they hoped, was that a devastating opening blow might shock America into negotiating before its industrial power could be fully unleashed. Pearl Harbor was that gamble. The plan required perfection. American carriers, fuel depots, repair facilities, and submarines all had to be destroyed. Any surviving capability would shorten the narrow window Japan depended on. The gamble was extreme, but from Tokyo's perspective, inaction meant certain defeat. Tactically, the attack succeeded. In under 2 hours, 8 American battleships were sunk or damaged, and hundreds of aircraft were destroyed. But strategically, Pearl Harbor failed almost immediately. America's aircraft carriers were not in port. Fuel storage tanks were untouched. Repair docks and submarine bases remained operational. Japan destroyed ships but left the systems of war intact. Even more damaging was the political effect. Pearl Harbor unified the American public overnight. Debate vanished. Negotiation became impossible. The United States was no longer deciding whether to fight, it was deciding how hard. Once mobilized, American industrial power dwarfed Japan's by every measure. The United States produced more steel, more oil, more ships, and more aircraft than Japan could ever match. Every American loss became a temporary setback. Every Japanese loss was permanent. By the summer of 1942, the war had already shifted from maneuver to replacement. By 1943, American production exceeded Japanese sinkings. Ships were built faster than they could be destroyed. Pilots were trained faster than they could be lost. Quantity became its own form of quality. Japan's decisive battle came at Midway. In a single day, 4 Japanese fleet carriers and hundreds of veteran pilots were lost. Those ships could be replaced. That experience could not. From that moment forward, Japan's offensive power began an irreversible decline. As American training expanded and aircraft improved, Japanese training collapsed under fuel shortages and time pressure. Standards were lowered, experience vanished. By 1944, Japan had ships without fuel, aircraft without pilots, and pilots without training. The war was no longer about tactics or courage, it was about replacement speed, and Japan's pipeline had failed. By the final year of the war, Japan was strategically immobile. Its economy was exhausted, its supply lines severed, and its military hollow. The empire still existed on maps, but it no longer functioned. The atomic bombs did not destroy Japan's ability to fight. They ended its ability to deny what had already happened. Pearl Harbor did not doom Japan because it angered America. It doomed Japan because it activated a system Japan could never compete with. Once American industry converted raw materials into ships, aircraft, and trained crews at scale, the outcome became inevitable. This is the lesson of the Pacific War. Victory does not belong to the side that strikes first or fights hardest. It belongs to the side that can replace losses without breaking. And mathematics does not bend.